Hello everyone, welcome to No Rest for the Wicked Early Access Benchmarking. So for those of you who don't know, No Rest for the Wicked is a brand new action RPG that just released by Moon Studios. It is in early access, which means it's basically in its beta phase. And we are going to be running through this game. We're using, as you can see, a GTX 1070 and a Ryzen 5 3600. PC I built kind of recently, and if you want to see how that PC was built, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And we're also going to be testing out another combination a little bit later with a Xeon W2135 and an RTX 4060. And we're just going to see how this game performs. It is a new game, as I mentioned, that just dropped. Early access means, you know, there's been some performance issues, known performance issues that people have been mentioning. So we're going to see how these two PCs run this game. And obviously optimizations will come over time. They did just drop a hotfix number 2 recently, so we are on the latest patch of this game. We're going to see how things run. So starting with this GTX 1070 Ryzen 5 3600, let's take a look at what we're running here. We are in, as you can see, performance mode, full render scale 100%, sharpness 100%. We're not running motion blur. I turned dynamic resolution scaling off just so we can see kind of how the raw resolution does, you know, how the raw FPS does here. We are in 1080p. Vsync is off with no frame rate cap. So we're going to see how things go. So I'm going to do a little circuit with all these benchmarks here. And we're just going to run through town. This is kind of the most stressful part on the hardware, running through town and then rendering into a new area. So that's what we're going to do back and forth as we do these tests. And you can see we're getting 44 FPS right now. Not the best, especially in performance mode. So this is where things start to struggle. You can see it dip down to about 38 there. And now it's going back up as soon as we get to the Orban Glades here. And things start to kind of level out, and then they dip back down again to 38 right there. So this is where I've seen the most struggles as I've been playing the game, is kind of rendering through the different areas. Now there's no upscaling for the game, so obviously we're just doing this raw here. And it is very CPU bound. It's a very CPU heavy game. So the Ryzen 5 3600, obviously a more budget CPU, though it can hold its own for sure. And you can see we are maxing out this 1070. It's at 100% utilization here. But we are not fully getting that 60 FPS on performance mode. So we're just going to keep going up and down the presets here. So let's try balance, see if that is how much worse that is, I guess. Basically, it's probably not going to be better. So we're just going to run back into town, see how that does for us. We're getting a solid 50, 55, 53. And then you can see it dips down into the low 40s, high 30s when we get into Sacrament here. So that's what we're working with. Now, obviously, this is older hardware. We have a GTX 1070, a much older GPU. And again, the Ryzen 5 3600, not the most powerful CPU on the market. So this is about probably what you'd expect for this combination. And once we get into Sacrament, we do hit 60 right around here, which is good. And we're gonna pop it up to quality, see how that looks, and we'll run right back down. We're not getting too big of a difference, honestly, with the frame rates here. You know, we get the mid to high 30s, so it is significantly worse, I guess I would say. But then it pops back up into the 50s, so it's playable for sure. But you're probably going to want to play in performance mode using hardware such as this. And then we dip down into the 30s once we get into the forest here. So we'll give best quality a shot. This is really going to kill any performance that we may have had. You can see we're not even getting 30 FPS when we do that. Whoa, dip down to 11 right there. This is not a playable experience, so obviously we're not going to be playing on best quality with these specs. So definitely playable. I'm going to pop it back to performance, and I just want to try it with both dynamic resolution on, and we'll turn VSync on as well just to see if that makes a difference for us. And not really. We're still getting 40, 42, 44. And that's the thing with this game, is I've noticed the settings don't make a huge difference, except for that best quality you saw that kind of killed any performance we had. But I've tinkered with the settings a lot with this game, and nothing has really drastically changed the performance. I've been getting about around what you're seeing right here, you know, mid-30s to sometimes 60 frames per second. So that's kind of what we're working with. Now I'm gonna change things to 1440 next, and the reason I want to try 1440 is because that should take some stress off of the CPU and more onto the GPU. You can see the GPU is pretty much fully utilized anyway, but we're gonna see if we can get at least these same frames per second marks at 1440. So we're gonna try that out next. Alright, so we are back with the 1070 and the Ryzen 5 3600 in 1440p. We are now in performance mode, dynamic resolution scaling off, and the display is now 1440. VSync off as well, no frame rate cap. So, yeah, things are not looking as good as I was hoping. We're at 33 frames per second. Let's just do a quick jaunt through the stressful area here. 38 FPS. You can see that GPU is fully maxed out, which is what you would expect. The CPU seems to be doing fine. We hit some CPU load as soon as we get into Sacrament here. 32, 30. So you're getting a solid 30 FPS. So 1440, 30 FPS. I mean, playable. Absolutely playable. You can play this game 30 FPS, no problem. You know, 40 here and there. Let's we'll give these other settings a shot just to see if it makes any difference. 39 FPS, 38 FPS, 36, 35, going down, down, down. Probably dip below 30 as soon as we get out of the city would be my guess. Yeah, we're getting in the 20s now, and this is where it usually hits, and then it jumps back up. So then we get, you know, 40. That's respectable. 39, 38, 37. Okay, so you're still getting around 30 FPS on the balanced. And we will try quality. Quality looks nice, I'll tell you that much. Definitely looks very nice. I love the art style of this game. Very fun game. Definitely check this out if you're into your action RPGs. And yeah, so here's the thing. I mean, the frames per second are not drastically changing between settings. It's really that best quality when things really start to dip. Otherwise, we're hovering right around 30 FPS no matter what our settings are. So you might as well use the quality mode, would be my recommendation, because, you know, get everything you can out of the graphics, and you're not going to lose a ton of performance. Now, best quality should squash all of that, I would imagine. Yep, now we start dipping down into the 20s. And you can see that vertical line, that VSync being off, is really causing that screen tear to happen. I will just try this as soon as we get out of the city. I'll turn VSync back on, and maybe I'll try a frame rate cap and see if that does anything different for us, but my guess is it probably will not. And we dip down into 20 right there. Yeah, that's kind of rough. So I'm gonna go back to quality. Let's do a target FPS of, I don't know, maybe 50. Think we can hit 50. And then our display. Here we go. We want the frame rate cap and VSync. I guess VSync on means we have to use the monitor setting, and then dynamic resolution is at 50. Let's turn that on. Okay, let's see what this does. We are on quality. It's about the same. You lose the screen tearing, so obviously you probably want VSync on. High 30s, low 40s. Playable. Absolutely playable. Again, this is older hardware. This is probably what you'd be expecting to get out of this game with these settings in this hardware. So there you have it. The GTX 1070 and the Ryzen 5 3600. No rest for the wicked benchmarked. Now we're going to move on to the W2135 and the RTX 4060. See how those go. All right, everybody, we are back, and now we are benchmarking with the Intel Xeon W2135 and the RTX 4060. And I will just note I have OBS open. I am recording, which is going to take a little bit of a frame hit. I will test these out with OBS closed, and I'll just mark what those frames are, as well as just so you know what to expect if you're not recording or streaming this game while playing it. So we're starting off in 1080p, no VSync, no frame rate cap, performance mode, and no dynamic resolution scaling on. So we're just going to do our same loop. We're going to run through Sacrament out to the forest, and we're going to do some jumps there, interestingly enough. And dipping down to the 40s. Not too different than the 1070 so far. And down into the 30s. This is where it always hits, right, going through the bridge. And then you get back up into the 40s and back up into the 50s. So it's kind of all over the place. It really is. 40s, 30s, oh, down into the 30s. Again, not a whole lot better than the 1070, to be honest here. This is a CPU-bound game. I've mentioned it already. The W2135 is an older Xeon CPU. You know, it's 7-year-old server CPU, which, you know, is not the most robust thing in the world, but still should be able to handle games like these. Again, it's playable. It's absolutely playable. You're just not getting that steady 60 that you probably would want with these settings. So we will then switch things over to balanced and see how that does. We'll do the loop again. And we're in the 40s, in the 40s, in the 40s. And you can see it's using a lot of RAM. I have 32 gigs of RAM. This is definitely eating up the RAM to help that CPU out. And dip down to the 30s, low 40s. It seems like once we get to the Serum Wisp, things get better. Right up here, our little save point here. Like right here, things get good again. Even though it's really only in the 50s. Okay, so not terrible. And we'll go back to quality. And quality does look really good, I must say. And we get 50s, you know, mid 50s running through town. Then we start going outside the initial rendered area. Things start to dip. We will run out over the bridge again. And boom, right down to the 30s. As expected. Again, it's not changing a whole lot between the settings. Between performance and quality mode, you're not getting the frame difference that you would expect. You'd expect performance to get, you know, higher frames. That's not necessarily the case here. And then we're going to go to best quality, which will definitely destroy it. This is the frames per second destroyer, this quality setting. Look at that RAM it's eating up. Just 22 gigs of RAM being utilized for this CPU. And you can see the 4060 is in some areas not being fully utilized. So it's definitely CPU bottlenecked for sure. And then once the 4060 is fully utilized, then you start getting those frames where you'd want them to be. So very interesting to see. And again, this was 1080p. We're going to try 1440p next. All right, so now we are running 1440, no frame rate cap, starting off in performance mode, no dynamic resolution scaling going on. Let's do the run. Starting off in the high 40s, low 50s. Again, I am recording with OBS. I am going to take a frame rate hit. I will post the real frames so you can see what those are without streaming or recording. And this is where we take our hit in the 30s, as expected. 47, 49, 48, 47, 44, 42, and big hit coming here. What are we going to get to? 32. 26. Okay. Now we'll zip over to balanced. Do the run back. So you could cap this at 30, 40, 45 frames per second and probably get a solid non-stuttery experience. And that's probably what I'd recommend. Obviously, with unlocked frame rates, I'm all over the place. So I would definitely lock those down. I'd use dynamic resolution scaling, all that good stuff. We're just doing the raw, what are we getting here in performance? That wasn't too bad with the balance. You know, we were in the 40s there. Quality, I would imagine, would be similar. And I would recommend using quality. You might as well, because you're not going to take a huge performance hit based on what we're seeing here. We are maxing out the 4060, which is nice to see in 1440. That's what we would want. We want less stress on that CPU until we get here. Of course, that just breaks everything. But we're still in the 40s. We'll probably drop down below the 30s once we get out here. Yep, there we go. Hit 29, 29, 27, 28, as expected. And then we will try best quality. And we probably will be right. Yeah, ooh, we hit 19 there. Can we hit 30? There we go. All right, we hit 30. You probably could play best quality and cap it at 30 FPS. And play that way if you wanted to. If you're fine with 30 FPS, it's definitely playable. It's, you know, a lot of games play on 30 FPS. But dipping below 30 is kind of rough. So I'd try to get above it if you could. So that's everything. That's no rest for the wicked. I'm sure things will get tweaked and optimized over time. Again, it is only in early access. The full release probably won't come out for a couple months. I'm not sure when they're planning. Probably once they squash all these bugs and optimize the performance and everything. But thank you all for watching, and I'll check you all out in the next one. See you then.